Hello, fourth graders. Today we are looking at plate tectonics, which are kind of like the pieces of the puzzle that make up Earth's crust. Now, I have a little material here, and these are all the continents back 200 million years ago when Earth was just one big continent and everywhere else was ocean. So all of the continents were all together. The reason scientists know this are these colors here. So for example, the yellow here, we're going to call it the European flora. So fossils have been found, like plant fossils have been found along the northeastern strip of North America, as well as the southern tip of Greenland, and the northwestern part of Europe. So scientists have concluded that at some point, these continents were connected because the same animals all lived there. Same with this orange. This would be the Cyanognathes reptile. So it's a type of large reptile that lived 200 million, a long time ago. And those fossils were found in South America, central part of South America, as well as Africa. And so scientists then can theorize that at one time, South America and Africa were touching each other because those reptiles could travel back and forth. It's also kind of fun to think about that South America and Africa, they kind of fit together like a puzzle. But over time, some things have happened. That term is called continental drift. The continents drift or move over time. In fact, they move at the same rate that your fingernails grow. Can you believe that? So over the course of 200 million years, the continents all shift to where they are today. This is probably not to scale, but it's close enough. We can also look at our chart here. Our chart, here are the continents 200 million years ago. Again, when our continents were all connected, that big mass was called Pangea. 135 million years ago, you can see they start to drift. And present day, here's what they look like today. Now there's a reason they do that. And that's because our Earth is a crust, the outer layer is a crust, and that crust kind of sits on top of a layer of molten lava. So the ground might seem hard, but it's constantly shifting. Kind of envision like if you put like a penny on top of a bowl of Jell-O, and it's kind of wiggly, and that penny kind of moves a little bit, right? That's kind of like the Earth's crust. And there are boundaries or faults in the Earth's crust and that's kind of the pieces of the puzzle. So let me show you a map here. This map is called, or this poster is called Earth in Motion. And these boundaries are called plates, or these pieces of the puzzle are called plates. So here you can see an outline. This is called the North American plate. So that plate is one piece of the puzzle. It's gonna be right there. Here we have the Pacific plate, the South American plate, the African plate. A lot of these plates are named after the continents for which live on those plates. The Eurasia plate, so Asia and Europe are all on one plate. There's not a boundary that goes through them. So Europe and Asia most likely will always stay connected. The Indian plate, an Australia plate, there's part of the Pacific plate, the Philippine plate. There are 7 main plates. And again, these plates move about the same speed at which your nails grow, which I think is unbelievable. Now, these plates move in 3 different ways. Here's where I'd like you to take some notes with me. If you need to get your geography notebook, please do that. And pause the video. The plates move in 3 different ways. The first one is transform. This is when 2 plates grind against each other. And we'll draw a picture diagram. Like here's one plate, here's another. We can always also use our hands. They kind of grind together like this. Now, the Earth is moving much slower, so that grinding might be like 1 tiny millimeter of a shift. That tiniest shift creates an earthquake. The bigger the shift, the bigger the transformation of these 2 boundaries, the bigger the earthquake. So we're going to make a little note that these make earthquakes. Earthquakes are commonly happening in California and New Zealand. Let's get our map out again. So if we look at our map, the transform fault is the red lines. So here we have some red lines here. This is right where California is. So we oftentimes have earthquakes here. Here's earthquakes around Central America, or the transform fault, and there's lots of times earthquakes there. We have the transform fault right around some of the Philippines and the Pacific Islands, and you many times hear of earthquakes happening there. And then here's New Zealand, and New Zealand is a common place to have earthquakes. So the transform fault are these red lines. Those are where the plates grind against each other. And again, it's just 1 tiny little dink that creates an earthquake. A second, I lost my marker. There we go. I'll use a different one. Is a divergent boundary. This is when magma rises and pushes the plates apart. Magma rises and pushes the plates apart. And so they're going away from each other. And magma comes out of that spot and cools, creating more earth there in some cases. The divergent boundary is happening in the ocean, and that makes sense because if our 2 plates were moving away from each other, there's creating a space. Water likes to fill up space. So water's going to flush into those areas, and more water is going to go in there as the plates move further apart. If we look at our map, we can see that all of the divergent boundaries, which are blue, are happening in the ocean. There's a video on Canvas, an optional video, that talks about the Mariana Trench, and that's the deepest part in the ocean. And that trench is part of a divergent boundary. So it's the very, very, very bottom of that is another layer of the earth, which is absolutely amazing to me. The final type of boundary movement is the convergent boundary. I keep losing my marker. There we go. A convergent boundary are when plates collide with or dive under another. So that is when we have our plates coming together, and because there's nowhere else to go, they go up. Or, I guess I'll do it this way, so they go up, or sometimes they go like this. I bet you can guess what this creates. When two plates come together, they collide and go up. If you guessed mountains, you're right. These convergent boundaries create mountains. So the Himalayas mountains in Asia, which are Earth's tallest mountains, those are created by convergent boundaries, which I think is pretty cool. If we look at our map, the yellow, there we go. The yellow lines are where we have convergent boundaries. So here, so all up the coast of South America, we have mountains, and that would be the Andes Mountains. And the all along here, the Pacific Islands all have mountains on them. So the yellow boundary lines are the convergent boundaries. Those are where two boundaries collide with each other to many times create mountains. And we better add a note that a key feature is the Mariana Trench for the divergent. Mariana Trench. I'm gonna have to spell check and make sure I got Mariana spelled correctly. If you're interested in that, go check out the video. And convergent is when we put the plates collide with one another, and kind of their only option is up, or one plate goes up and another plate goes down, kind of sneaks underneath it. So these are the three ways. What I would like you to do now is, using this map, which is on canvas, a picture of it is on canvas, I would like you to draw your own map of the boundaries. So in your canvas folder, you have a blank, an empty world map, and I would like you to add the plate boundaries. Make sure, I want you to have a key. So I want you to have which boundaries have the transform fault, the divergent boundary, and the convergent boundary. So your map will look very similar to this. I would like you to label the plate names. So if you were creating your Pacific plate, you would label it Pacific plate, and then draw the boundaries, making the blue divergent boundary, and then right when you get up to the coast of California, you switch it to red, where we have the transform boundary, and then back to yellow for the convergent boundary, red for the transform fault, and then yellow again for the convergent boundary. So again, you need to have a key. You don't have to use these colors, but you do need to have a key so that we know which one is transform, divergent, and convergent, and it should match what you're putting on your map. Make sure you label your plates, and for extra credit, you could also label some major cities and oceans and things like that too. Have fun. Check out the other videos that are at the bottom. I think there's 3 videos on there that are optional if you'd like to learn more. This is super interesting stuff, so I challenge you to learn as much as you can about it. Have fun!